we have Michele Ojeda from the Financial Aid Office, and so she'll be speaking about Budgeting 101. Personally, I think this is an awesome topic for anyone, but especially for students, I think it's really important because, you know, a lot of you all work, like have a job or two, maybe helping your family, and really wanting to take hold of the finances in your life, which is really important to do as a young person. I'm sure a lot of you may have student loans as well. I know I did. And so I just thought that this would be a great way for, you know, you both to really learn and hopefully get some knowledge out of it.
Great. Okay, so ladies, I've got two monitors, so I'm looking at my camera monitor, but above me is my presentation. And so I'll kind of be looking up and down throughout it. Feel free to ask questions. We'll have a period of time at the end, but there's only two of you, so I think we'll have plenty of time. And basically, yeah, as Natalie mentioned, just an idea to, you know, put out there about budgeting, about savings. We'll talk a little bit about COVID-19 and how that impacts your lives right now. But just some basic information. Just starting off, if either of you have ever budgeted, it's just kind of a beginning 101, like we titled it. So let's just jump in. And so the objectives are the things that I'd like to cover with you guys today. What is financial literacy? It's a term that's thrown around quite a bit. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that. And then along with that, I like to also talk about financial wellness because it kind of goes together. It's a similar concept. We'll talk about the importance of a budget and what a budget would look like. We'll talk about needs versus wants. We'll talk about, like I said, COVID-19, coping with change. And then I have a little slide on tips from the trenches. So just some little tips that can help you as you move along through the budgeting process. So we'll go ahead and get started. Also, just to let you know, I think Natalie mentioned it in the emails that she sent, but also we're going to record this presentation so that others can, you know, benefit from it and be able to see it as well for those that weren't able to attend. Or for other purposes that Natalie might have for other groups of students. So we are going to be recording this so that you know. Also, I will provide Natalie with the PowerPoint deck of slides so that she can share it with you as well. There's a number of websites that I reference in the presentation, so I don't want you to be scribbling things down or have to worry about taking a picture of the slide. We'll give you the entire presentation so that you have access to all the different websites. Okay, so talking a little bit about financial literacy, like I said, it's a term that people use for a number of different things, but basically it's the ability to make effective and informed money management or financial decisions about your own life. The wellness piece of it also involves how to successfully manage your financial expenses, your money, where your money's going, what are you spending more money on? What should you be spending your money on? Are you budgeting? Are you saving? Are you thinking about your student loan repayment in the future? All of those things lumped together. Like I said, financial literacy is a broad term, but it really means knowing what you have coming in and what you have going out. That's about as basic as it can be. It's important because money can be a very stressful topic, okay? And it's especially stressful if you don't know where your money's going, okay? So it's a common source of stress, anxiety, and fear. And those are not feelings that you want to have while you're trying to concentrate on your classes and your education. Keeping track of those expenses, like I said, knowing how much money you have coming in, whether that be from a job, whether that be from financial aid, whether that be from support from your parents or your family. Knowing what you have coming in and what you have going out can help to alleviate some of that stress and fear. And again, these are things that will last a lifetime. These are things that me at 56 are still dealing with and learning about and trying to put constantly into practice. So it's a lifetime process. It's a lifetime experience. And so it's awesome that you guys are learning a little bit about it or getting into it at this young of an age. Questions at all? Okay. You can also use the chat feature, and Natalie can and will be checking that as well. Okay, so why create a budget? So it goes back to what we said. Budgeting is the foundation of identifying your money and identifying how you're spending it and how you're making it and what you're doing with it once you have it. So a budget allows you to know what funds you have, how you should be either restricting some of those funds for the future, spending those funds on certain things, have an idea of what the majority of your funding is going towards. So it's basically a snapshot or a picture of your money. It tells you exactly what you have coming in and what you have going out. I've got this little graphic on here, empowerment, because it is a form of empowerment. You do feel empowered when you are not having to worry about how you're going to pay your rent next month. Okay, it's a really strong sense of empowerment that you have when you know that you've got the money to cover your bills next month. That makes sense. Budgeting basics. So it can be as simple as having a spreadsheet. It can be as simple as, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the envelope method. It's an old school way of saving or keeping your money in one place. You create an envelope for each of the bills that you have, and you put your cash into those envelopes, and then you've got that for your next month. Like I said, old school, but it works. Creating a spreadsheet again, the phone apps. So we've got multiple phone apps that I can share with you that allow you to budget, and they're as much as detail you want to get into it. So in other words, it can link to these phone apps can link to your bank account. They can send you alerts and let you know that you're getting either low on a particular account or that a bill is coming up. You've used too much of what you set aside for your debit expenses for the month. So it can be very involved or it can be very simple. So you have the option. And like I said, I've got a few apps that I'll share with you that are reputable. We've checked out. And it's another way to do it. With everybody, being on their phones, it's sometimes easier just to do it via an app. But a spreadsheet is as basic. Spreadsheet is you put in how much money you have coming in, how much money you have going out, and what is that bottom line figure. And that tells you how much you have, or how much you have for savings, how much you have for an emergency fund, or if you're unfortunately in the negative. Okay. Write down 3 or 4 things that you want to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years. These are some ideas for you to think about. This may include things like home ownership, starting a family, starting your business. Then write down 2 things, 3 things that you want to accomplish in the next year. So first one is 5 to 10 years. The next one is within the next year. This may include things like paying off your debt, building an emergency fund, graduating, starting a new job. And then finally, write 1 thing that you want to accomplish in the next month. This may be saving a certain amount of money to go on a trip, or to stop using your credit cards, or to save money for some kind of a concert, or something simple like that, just something that you could accomplish. This is going to help you learn how to set up goals and saving for those goals. And that's a part of budgeting as well. So if you have an idea of things that you want to be able to accomplish, goals, within that time span, that's going to allow you the ability to add that to your budget. And so there'll be a line in your budget, that says rent and food, but then there'll also be a line, a goal that you have that you want to accomplish. And you can, in your mind, start setting aside money towards meeting that goal. The 5 to 10 goal, of course, that's a lot of years away. But it gives you an idea, it gives you a concept, it starts you thinking about setting aside money for big purchases. So needs versus wants, that also comes into the budgeting conversation. A need is something that you need for survival, basically, water, food, clothing, shelter. A want is something that to make life more enjoyable. Now, a few years ago, we would include a cell phone on a want. But these days, a cell phone is part of the need column for a lot of people. So those are kind of some of the things that have to adjust with how we adjust living our lives. But a need is something that you need for survival. A want is something that you need or that you want for to enjoy your life. And I've got a little graphic of some of the things that might fall under those categories. And again, you want to think about the needs versus the wants when you're creating that budget, right? Because your needs are going to be, necessities. They're going to be things that you have to pay every single month. The wants are going to add in or come into the budget picture as you have the money to afford them, basically. Okay, so the needs, housing, like I said, transportation, insurance, gas and electric, food, childcare, those kinds of things. Wants are travel, entertainment, designer clothes, gym memberships, coffee house drinks, expensive dinners, those kinds of things. So having a concept and an idea in your head, what your needs are and what your wants are going to help you, proceed with that budgeting process. That makes sense, hopefully. It's so hard not having eye contact with you guys or having any kind of expressions, but let's keep going. Okay, this is just a little graphic of an idea of how to start that budgeting process. And so step one is to gather all of your financial statements, get those bank statements. Do you hold on to, if you pay online, that get, be able to print out a history or have a history up on your computer of your expenses and your bills that you've paid through your bank online. So have that ready. Gather everything that you're going to need to create that budget because it's going to make it an easier process. Add up all your income. So like we talked about earlier, that can be a job. It can be financial aid. It can be support from family or friends. It can be a combination of all three. Okay, so add up all of your income. Step 3, list your expenses. Here comes that want and need issue that we talked about. So divide them into fixed or variable columns. Step 4, subtract your expenses from your income. Okay. And again, you can be doing all of this either on paper, you can do this on an app, you can do this on an Excel spreadsheet. Whatever works easiest and best, whatever's going to make you actually do it is the best route to take. Step 5, review and adjust your expenses accordingly. Okay, so if the income is more than the expenses, bravo, you are great, and you can actually set aside money for an emergency fund, which we'll talk about later. If it's the opposite and you are spending more than you're making, then that's when you need to start adjusting. And again, a budget is a constantly changing document. It's never going to be stagnant because life is not stagnant. You're constantly changing. You're constantly making different kinds of purchases based on what's going on in your life. You're constantly making changes based on if you're working or not, or if you're just a student. So it's an ever-evolving document, product that you're going to constantly update and change. So talking about that emergency fund, experts say that you should probably have 3 to 4 months of income saved. In other words, you should be able to pay your bills for 3 or 4 months from your emergency fund. Now that is what the experts say. How realistic is that for some people, especially for students? Probably not so much. But you want to have an idea and the concept of an emergency fund in your life, okay? Life happens, cars break down, stuff gets stolen, unfortunately. You need to make an unexpected purchase for something that is going to help you. And what I say here is if you have money remaining after subtracting all of your expenses, consider putting it in an emergency fund. And even if that ends up being $10 a month, $10 a month is going to continue to grow. And by the time you know it, you're going to have an emergency fund sitting there for you for anything unexpected that comes up. Little bit about behavior and money, because they go in hand. They're connected to each other, especially these days with our 24-hour marketplace that we have. In other words, if you can't sleep at night, you wake up and maybe you log on to Amazon and you make a purchase. It's probably not the best time to make a purchase, right? So being cognizant and aware of that 24-hour marketplace and how your behavior reacts to that is important, okay? You want to practice financial self-awareness. You want to be aware, again, of how much money you actually have. And that doesn't mean that you use a credit card or a debit card to make the purchase because you don't have the cash in hand. If you don't have the cash in hand, then you probably can't afford to make that purchase and probably shouldn't. That makes sense. Observe your thoughts and behaviors, feelings around money. And how were you raised? Was it a conversation at the dinner table? Did mom and dad talk about, money and savings and those kinds of things? Or is this all brand new to you? So think about your behavior, think about your history, and what brought you to this place now in terms of your knowledge about money. Watch yourself and others. Be honest with yourself about those kinds of purchases that you're making, especially those that you're making on the fly. You want to, maybe you're out with friends and you want to pay for everybody's drink one round. Think about that. How is that going to impact next month's credit card bill when it comes in, if you're using credit card? Think about your behavior, be aware of it. That's the point. Here's some of those budgeting apps that I talked about. Mint.com. Mint.com is probably one that we refer students to the most. It has all of the capability that I talked about where it can track everything for you. Everything from, like I said, it can pay your bills, it can send you alerts, you can create your budget, everything and anything that you want to do. Mint.com is a really good one. These are all free. Pocketguard.com and acorns.com. And acorns.com has a whole suite of information about investment. And I know that some of the questions that came up that you all or that folks sent to Natalie were surrounding investment. And investment's not really something that we talk about on campus in terms of the Financial Aid and Scholarships Office because we're not financial planners, okay? We're not invested, using that word. We're not experienced in that aspect of money and savings. And so we would always refer students to talk with a financial planner when it comes to investments. But acorns.com is a site that you could view, an app that you could look at that does have some investment capabilities. Okay, so those are the 3 apps that we suggest students use. So let's talk a little bit about COVID-19. And just like, Natalie and I and the 2 of you, it's all new. Everything's changing every single day. This is all a new experience. We just, right before we started, we got a message alert from the chancellor talking about the plans, for the summer and for next year, what that's going to look like. So it's constantly changing. But I did, want to let you guys know, remind you guys, this isn't a time for vacation or being out of class. It's still, super important that you're concentrating on your education and proceeding with your online classes. It's a sudden change for everybody, of course. Um, different living environments, sporting events, the way we move, it's constantly changing. You want to make sure that you remind yourself that this is, temporary, that this isn't going to, hopefully this is not going to what our life's going to look like in the future, that we've got to get through it. Have some self-compassion for yourself. I know for myself, I have to make myself take a break during the day. It's very easy just to get into being, on the job 24/7, being at home because the capability is there. So for you guys, just make sure that you're actually taking the time out to take a break, to give yourself some self-care, think about your wellness, and in addition to thinking about your classes and getting through the quarter. I know it's a tight, and I know that there's a lot to consider, but just a reminder, just to practice self-compassion. Routine's another thing. So all of our routines have been thrown up in the air and then smashed down to the ground because we don't know, what's going on. So creating a routine can be difficult. I read some things about, for me as an employee, to still wake up at the same time every day, get dressed, do your makeup, do your hair as female, and you keep into that kind of routine, because eventually we're going to get back to real life. And what that's going to look like. And it'll be easier if you don't keep up with some form of routine, if that makes sense. I read about good sleep, hygiene, nutrition, self-care, activities outside of screen time. That's always hard too. It's essential to remember these kinds of practices as much as possible. Stay informed, but don't spend all your time looking at the TV news. Or reading about everything that's going on. It can be overwhelming. So because of the COVID-19, we want to talk a little bit about job loss and unemployment. And here's some of those websites that I referenced that we will make available to you. And so one is from nerdwallet.com. It's a funny name. It's a great resource as well. And they give a lot of information about applying for unemployment benefits, because that's something that may be something that you guys are interested in doing. If you've worked part-time and you were laid off, then you want to definitely look to apply for unemployment benefits. Some of the federal and state financial support that they've made available, at the feds and California state have made available, are listed there at labor.ca.gov. And then pandemic unemployment assistance is a Department of Education website, edd.ca.gov, and it gives additional information, resources, that may be available to you as students in California that have become unemployed. So again, we'll send this to you so that you have it. Here's a few tips from the trenches. Create and use a budget. So we talked about it, and I hope you guys will consider thinking about creating a budget. You may already be doing a budget, which is awesome. Take advantage of student discounts. You can, some are advertised, others are not. We've got a lot that are advertised on campus when we're on campus, but you can do a Google search in your area. So say you live in La Jolla, you can go onto Google and put in free student discounts, and a whole list of different resources will come up. So you want to take advantage of that as a student. Avoid buying new textbooks if you can. It really depends on your major and what your intention is. But if you can avoid buying brand new books, it's always best. It's going to save you money. If you do want to if you don't have a credit card now and you're interested in getting a credit card, make sure you look for ones that have benefits, that are going to give you benefits. Of course, you want to look for one that has a lower interest rate, but also look for one that is going to give you some form of benefit, whether that be miles to fly with. Just take the first credit cards that are given to you, but do your research. And then utilize discount websites like Groupon and Living Social. Those are always, they have some good deals in there that can save you some money as well. Okay, I'll open it up to questions for you guys.
Feel free to enter any in the chat if you'd like. I think this has been a great presentation. Just to add for the tips as well, I know a lot of us aren't driving a lot these days, so be sure to reach out to whoever your car insurance person is and see if there are any discounts available, whether that's reducing the mileage, because you know that you won't be commuting because of what's happening during the summer or even the fall. Anything like that, reduction in premiums. I know I reached out and got a pretty significant discount just for asking.
Yeah.
Sometimes they won't share this knowledge freely.
Yeah, that's a great point, Natalie. Also, if you do already have existing credit cards and you're struggling to make payments on those, reach out to those lenders, because they will definitely work with you if you're struggling to make payment. And that goes along with utilities. It goes along with anything that you're having to pay on a monthly basis that you need help with. So don't be shy. Reach out to those vendors and see what kind of deal you can get. It's not going to hurt anything to try, right?
Definitely. Yeah, and even with student loans, I know those are on 0% interest, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Until September, so that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, payments and interest are both on hold per the federal government through September 30th of 2020. And actually, I'll be doing a student loan presentation, repaying your student loan presentation, ladies, on May 12th. And so I'll provide that information to Natalie and she can share that with you. It's going to be just an hour of talking about student loans. So that's another option. But yeah, definitely good point, Natalie, that there are currently plans in place from the feds that are alleviating you from having to pay back your student loans during this period.
Definitely. So it looks like Tyra asked a question. It is, what's a good way to determine how much to save each month for an emergency fund? Any percentage of income to go by?
It's you know, as most of this is, it's based on your own personal life and what you have going on and what kind of money resources you have. I used that suggestion of $10 a month because as a student, that's sometimes all you can afford to give. But if once you do your budget and you look at what you're actually spending your money on, are you spending, you know, $10 a day at Starbucks for your coffees? And could that $10 then go into your emergency fund? So there really isn't a magic number. It's more what you feel comfortable with. Once you do your budget, you're going to have a really good picture of what that's going to look like and what you personally can identify to put towards that emergency fund. So yeah, that would kind of be my response. So the first step is to really do that budget so that you have an idea of what kind of money you have left over for that emergency.
Yeah, I would say for me personally, what I do is I have separate savings accounts for different things that I pay for. So I have an account for like my car, and then one for rent, and then one for an emergency fund, and then one for what I call sinking funds. So that's for things like gifts that I like to save up for throughout the year, so it's not a big hit when I do need to pay for it.
Right.
And as far as what I save for each, again, that budget aspect is definitely really eye-opening. I know as a student, it can change every 2 weeks, every month. So maybe just see what your average income has been over the past couple months and base your budget on that for the time being. Start out small for sure, and then increase it every time you're able to. One tip I have is that the same day my paycheck hits my account, I have different sets of money go into those different accounts. Um, Honestly, it's super easy. I just set it up, it's automated. I don't need to think about it. And what's good for me is that because I don't see that money go into the accounts, like I save and I don't even realize it
Right.
until I suddenly open it up and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It's time to pay rent and I have the money.
Right.
Um, or great, my emergency fund has hit this next milestone. And for some people, that milestone is $100, then 250, then
Right.
500, then 1,000. It's
Right.
going to look very different as a student. So don't feel any source of shame at the amount. The fact
Right.
that you even have an emergency
Yes,
fund
it's
at
huge.
all
Yes.
is like the best thing. It's something that a lot of people in this country don't have the privilege of having, especially now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of similarly, I put money automatically from my paycheck every month towards my 401k. I never even see it. And so it automatically goes through and I don't think about it. But when it comes to retirement, which is not that far off for me, I know that I've done something good every month by putting that money aside.
Yeah. So yeah, an emergency fund, having goals too, whether that's saving up for a laptop, a car, anything like that,
Right.
is also helpful to have. I think it makes saving money easier when you have that.
Yeah.
Looks like a question came in from Annabelle. What is a common mistake that college students make when budgeting?
Um, Probably not doing it. Actually, I mean, it's not like Natalie said, it's not the most fun thing to do. It can be a little painful. It can be a little daunting because you're actually really looking at where your money is going. So probably not doing it. Number two is probably credit cards and using credit cards more often than not because you may not have the money at that point. Like I said, I think in part of the presentation, if you don't have the money in your bank account to back up the purchase, then don't make it. Using that credit card is not the backbone of what you should be doing. So I think creating credit card debt, not doing the budget, possibly taking out more student loans than what you really need is another. And we're pretty strong in our office in that we don't want you to take out debt, and you actually have to go through a process to be able to borrow a student loan. And so probably those three things, Annabelle, are three things that we see students unfortunately doing more often than they should.
Yeah, definitely the student loan aspect. I've had friends realize that now. Um, Thankfully, I personally took out loans, but I made sure that it only covered what I needed it to cover, and I used it for that purpose. I always added an extra 1,000 or so each year that I took out loans just as a buffer. I know that's not something that everyone can feel comfortable taking on, but I just wanted to have it there just in case anything happened. And that was while having a job or two during college. I would say the loan aspect is a big one, but yeah, definitely just not seeing where your money is going. And
Right.
I think that's probably the biggest thing,
Yeah,
because if you don't know where it's going, you don't know what needs to be reassessed.
correct.
And I think another thing is you need to think about what's important to you. So if for someone that's getting their daily coffee at their favorite coffee shop, that can be totally fine if you make room
Sure.
for it in your budget. And
Exactly.
that might mean that another area you don't save as much in. But if you're okay with that and
Yeah.
you really value that coffee, then
Right.
that's
For
fine.
sure. For sure. Absolutely. And that, I mean, gets to the whole point of if you don't know all of those those things by not doing a budget, you're never going to know. You're never going to know what you need to save for and what those goals look like that you want to accomplish.
Are there any other questions that either of you two may have? If not, that's totally okay.
Yeah. And my contact information is on here as well. So you can definitely reach out to me at any time if you guys have questions. Email is usually the best way to get a hold of me because I'm constantly have access to it on my phone or on my computer. So if you guys want to, I meet often with students to create budgets. Right now, obviously, we can't do that, but we could definitely have a conversation if you had questions about creating a budget or questions about financial aid or anything. I'm available.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for your time, and thank you both for attending our very first Zoom workshop. So we really appreciate the time that you put aside for this, and hopefully it's useful. Michelle will be sharing the slide deck with me, so I can share it out to you both, as well as the recording if you would like. But yeah, thank you all for being here, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate meeting both of you. And again, contact me if you have any questions at all. Thank you. Thank you, Natalie.
Of course. Bye.